Battle of the Bulge wasn't just another World War II epic. It was a sprawling Hollywood war gamble, disguised as history, filled with spectacle shortcuts and secrets. What audiences never saw behind the wide 70mm grandeur were Spanish hills standing in for Belgium actor clashes, studio rewrites, and tank battles built on illusion. From fake snow to borrowed armies, chaos erupted daily. In this countdown, we reveal 15 shocking secrets about Battle of the Bulge, secrets even die-hard fans rarely know. Secret number 15. The fake Ardennes. The film opens with snowbound Belgian forests, but the truth was blazing Spanish heat. The crew filmed in the Sierra de Guadarrama mountains near Madrid, pretending it was Belgium in winter. The landscape was dry, dusty, and wrong for the Ardennes. The crew covered the hills with white marble dust to fake snow. Then, real snowstorms buried the set for weeks, halting production. Tanks froze, cameras jammed, and call sheets fell apart. The production had budgeted for sun, not blizzards. Every day was a struggle to drag equipment through mud, while the cast sweated inside heavy uniforms. It looked epic on film, but off-camera, it was chaos. What audiences saw as frozen heroism was actually a battle against nature and logistics. It wasn't authenticity. It was survival disguised as cinema. Secret number 14. The Spanish Army deal. To save money, the producers made a wild deal with Spain. They borrowed 500 soldiers and about 70 tanks from the Spanish Army. It sounded clever, but those tanks were outdated American M47 Pattons, painted to look like German King Tigers. The Allied tanks were mostly light chaffies wearing false armor. The result looked impressive on screen, but no historian was fooled. The production filmed with 2 tank platoons circling the same hill to fake an army. Crews shot from opposite sides to double the numbers. What fans never realized was that the biggest battle of the film was mostly choreography and camera trickery. The illusion was powerful, but beneath the smoke, the steel was secondhand. It wasn't power, it was performance. Secret number 13. Robert Shaw's stand. Robert Shaw was paid $250,000 to play Colonel Hessler, the German tank commander. Shaw refused to make Hessler a cartoon villain. He wanted discipline, tragedy, and conviction. He consulted a real German officer who had fought in the Ardennes and demanded the soldiers be shown as human, not monsters. The studio wanted spectacle. Shaw wanted realism. On set, that conflict simmered. He argued over dialogue, questioned direction, and refused to exaggerate. The famous scene where Hessler sings the Panzerlied wasn't written as glorification. It was Shaw's idea to show fatal pride. He wanted audiences to feel admiration and dread at the same time. It wasn't defiance for fame. It was defiance for truth, and it nearly cost him his role. Secret number 12. The legal battle behind the title. Before cameras rolled, lawyers were already at war. Another studio was developing a rival Battle of the Bulge project with official army backing. To dodge lawsuits, this version agreed never to mention real names like Eisenhower or Patton. That's why the film feels oddly detached from actual command history. Characters speak of high command and strategic fronts, but never name real leaders. The narration even makes geographical mistakes just to stay legally safe. The writers change details daily to avoid infringement. Director Ken Anakin later admitted he took the job reluctantly, calling it just another war picture. What audiences never knew was that half the script was shaped not by creativity, but by contracts. It wasn't freedom of art. It was filmmaking by legal loophole. Secret number 11. Eisenhower's outrage. Go ahead and like and subscribe, because the story is about to explode into controversy. When veterans saw the finished film, they were furious. The flat, sunny terrain looked nothing like the snow-choked forests they remembered. The tank maneuvers were wrong, the uniforms inaccurate, and the timelines confused. Dwight Eisenhower himself reportedly came out of retirement to condemn the movie's distortions. He said it dishonored the memory of those who fought. Newspapers ran headlines calling it a mockery of history. For Warner Brothers, the outrage was both disaster and advertisement. People went to see what had angered a former president. The film made money, but lost respect. What was meant to honor bravery ended up sparking fury. It wasn't triumph, it was backlash. Secret number 10. The tanks that couldn't move. The mighty armored battles that thunder across the screen looked unstoppable, but the truth was painfully different. Most of the tanks rented from the Spanish Army were mechanical nightmares. Their engines overheated, their treads slipped in the mud, and many wouldn't even start when the cameras rolled. Crews had to push dead tanks into frame just to fill the background. Hydraulic leaks stained the snow, and smoke machines covered the failures. One morning, half the fleet froze overnight and had to be thawed with open fires. The tank scenes that looked like chaos were carefully edited fragments of 2 working vehicles shot from 10 angles. Director Ken Anakin later admitted that the tank warfare was a cinematic miracle, stitched together from breakdowns and improvisation. The roar of engines that thrilled audiences wasn't recorded from the real tanks, but dubbed in from stock audio. It wasn't war machinery, it was movie magic, fighting to stay alive. Secret number 9. The nightmare of the explosions. The explosions in Battle of the Bulge were as real as they looked, and far more dangerous. Special effects crews planted live charges throughout the battlefield sets, often within feet of the actors. Safety standards were minimal and communication chaotic. On one notorious day, a mistimed detonation sent chunks of debris flying past Robert Shaw and Henry Fonda, narrowly missing them. Extras dove for cover, believing they were under attack. The production team wanted the blasts to look authentic, and they succeeded at a cost. Shrapnel struck cameras, lights shattered, and one crew member was hospitalized. The director kept rolling, insisting that war is messy. Many of the dramatic slow-motion shots were actually real reactions to uncontrolled detonations. What audiences saw as cinematic intensity was barely contained panic. It wasn't simulated combat. It was survival, caught on film, and hidden behind the editing room's calm precision. Secret number 8. Tense alliances on set. Behind the scenes, alliances formed and cracked under the weight of exhaustion. Robert Shaw clashed repeatedly with co-star Telly Savalas, whose larger-than-life personality dominated the set. Savalas played the opportunistic Sergeant Guffey with swagger and humor, while Shaw remained methodical and cold. Their styles collided daily. Savalas improvised dialogue, Shaw demanded strict adherence to the script. In one heated exchange, Shaw reportedly walked off set until Anakin intervened. Meanwhile, Henry Fonda kept his distance from both men, staying professional, but increasingly frustrated with the disorganized shoot. Crew members called the atmosphere controlled warfare. Off-camera egos maneuvered like armies positioning for command. What fans never saw was that the film's quiet tension mirrored the real human power struggle behind the lens. It wasn't just fiction meeting history, it was actors fighting their own Battle of the Bulge every single day. Secret number 7. The weather that broke the crew. Spain's unpredictable climate became the film's greatest enemy. The production needed freezing overcast gloom, but the country delivered heat fog and sudden snowstorms. Some days the sun blazed at 80 degrees, melting the artificial snow before lunch. Other days, icy winds cut through the set, forcing costume departments to wrap extras in hidden blankets. Makeup artists battled frostbite and sweat simultaneously. Cameras jammed from condensation, and reels had to be flown back to London to dry in controlled rooms. The call sheets changed hourly, because no one knew if the next scene would be blindingly bright or buried in sleet. Crew morale collapsed. Extras muttered that it felt like serving in a real campaign without medals or rest. The director finally joked that nature was the true general of the movie. It wasn't just weather, it was mutiny from the sky, commanding every decision. Secret number 6. The Cinerama Chaos. Battle of the Bulge was filmed in 70mm Ultra Panavision, meant for massive Cinerama screens. That technology promised grandeur, but created endless nightmares. The cameras were gigantic, heavy, and fragile. Setting up one shot took hours and required cranes, trucks, and entire crews. The wide format exposed every mistake, from crooked uniforms to fake tank tracks. Lighting had to cover football field-sized areas, forcing electricians to work overnight, just to match continuity. When footage reached the editing room, the frames often misaligned, causing the sky to shimmer, or the ground to warp. Audiences in 1965 saw epic vistas, but the editor saw hundreds of reels that refused to synchronize. The wide frame gave the illusion of precision, yet behind it was chaos, measured in millimeters. It wasn't cinematic perfection. It was technical warfare, fought with lenses instead of guns. Secret number 5. The studio that lost control. Warner Brothers believed Battle of the Bulge would be their grand answer to The Longest Day, but ambition devoured discipline. The studio executives wanted a box office epic filled with explosions and heroics, while director Ken Anakin wanted nuance and moral complexity. As filming dragged through Spain's harsh conditions, the budget ballooned past $6 million. The studio panicked. Executives began sending telegrams demanding more spectacle, fewer speeches, and a faster pace. Anakin refused, and tempers ignited. Producers even flew to Madrid to oversee scenes, personally rewriting lines overnight. Anakin later said the film slipped away from everyone as committees rewrote history to please preview audiences. Editors were ordered to shorten dialogue and extend battle footage regardless of continuity. The ending originally showed a quiet reflection on loss, but the studio replaced it with a fiery tank explosion finale. What audiences finally saw was a tug-of-war between commerce and conscience, projected onto 70mm film. It wasn't direction by vision, it was direction by panic, and the scars of that interference can still be felt in every uneven scene that flickers across the screen today. Secret number 4. The American soldier who hated his role. Henry Fonda signed on expecting a serious portrayal of Allied leadership, but quickly realized the script was more fantasy than fact. His character, Colonel Kiley, was a composite of several real officers, yet stripped of their strategy and humanity. Fonda grew frustrated with shallow dialogue that turned him into what he called a map pointer rather than a man. He spent hours rewriting his own lines, trying to inject realism and restraint. On set, he quietly voiced his disappointment to crew members, calling the production a tourist's version of war. During battle sequences, he performed his own minor stunts to lend credibility, but the director cut many of them for pacing. Fonda's professionalism never cracked, yet those close to him said he left the set each night visibly disillusioned. When the movie premiered, he skipped the Hollywood fanfare, choosing instead to spend the evening at home. To audiences, he looked like stoic command, but inside, he was waging a private rebellion against the superficial treatment of history. It wasn't just another paycheck role, it was a reminder that even legends can lose faith in the battlefield of Hollywood. Secret number 3. The premiere that backfired. The premiere of Battle of the Bulge in December 1965 was meant to be a patriotic triumph. Warner Brothers booked the Cinerama Dome in Los Angeles and filled it with veterans, dignitaries, and Hollywood elite. The lights dimmed, the overture played, and within minutes murmurs spread through the audience. Veterans whispered corrections aloud. The terrain looked wrong. The strategy confused, the tactics laughable. By intermission, the mood had soured. Eisenhower's former staffers publicly condemned the movie the next day, calling it an insult to those who fought in the Ardennes. Reviews described it as spectacle without soul. The studio's publicity team scrambled, releasing statements claiming the film was a tribute, not a documentary. Despite critical backlash, box office numbers were strong, but word of mouth turned toxic. War historians dismissed it as one of the most inaccurate war films ever made. Anakin himself admitted later that the movie was too big for its own truth. The premiere was supposed to crown a masterpiece, but instead it exposed a costly illusion. It wasn't a celebration of courage. It was a warning about what happens when history becomes entertainment. Secret number 2. The aftermath that shook careers. The fallout from Battle of the Bulge rippled across Hollywood. Ken Anakin's reputation as a reliable director suffered as critics labeled the movie bloated and confused. Bernard Gordon, the writer who fought censorship and blacklisting in earlier years, saw his name overshadowed by controversy once again. Henry Fonda distanced himself from the film in later interviews, preferring to discuss 12 Angry Men, or Mr. Roberts instead. Robert Shaw, however, emerged stronger. His commanding performance as Hessler earned attention from major producers and directly led to his casting in The Sting and later Jaws. For Shaw, the chaos became a stepping stone, but for others, it was professional quicksand. Warner Brothers retreated from large-scale war productions for years, focusing instead on smaller dramas and musicals. What few knew was that the studio quietly shelved plans for a sequel set during the Battle of Berlin. The industry learned that even with Cinerama and color spectacle, authenticity still mattered. The aftermath wasn't glorious victory. It was quiet reckoning for everyone involved in the gamble. Secret number 1. The secret ending that never was. Hidden in early drafts of the script was an ending that audiences never saw. Instead of the fiery destruction of tanks on a sunny plain, the film originally closed with a haunting snow scene. The camera was to drift across abandoned helmets and frozen soldiers as Henry Fonda's voice reflected on the cost of pride. It was somber, poetic, and brutally honest. But Warner Brothers rejected it, fearing audiences wanted closure, not despair. They demanded more explosions and triumph. The alternate ending was filmed but never developed for release. The footage reportedly vanished after post-production, though some stills survived showing white landscapes untouched by victory. Crew members swore it was the most beautiful scene shot during the entire production. It would have transformed the movie from a noisy spectacle into a meditation on war's emptiness. Instead, audiences got fire where there should have been silence. It wasn't a finale of glory, it was the erasure of truth, sacrificed for the illusion of victory. Bonus fact: the legacy no one expected. Despite its flaws, Battle of the Bulge refused to die. Decades later, it found new life among collectors and war enthusiasts, drawn to its massive scope and haunting musical score. Film restorations in 70mm revealed details forgotten for years. Modern critics reassessed it not as history, but as myth, a symbol of how Hollywood's reach often outpaces its grasp. Veterans continued to criticize, yet younger audiences discovered it as a relic of old-school filmmaking, where every explosion was real, every tank physical, and every mistake human. Its imperfections became part of its power. The film stands today as both cautionary tale and cinematic monument to ambition unchecked. It wasn't the most accurate war film ever made, but it remains one of the most audacious. In the end, Battle of the Bulge reminds us that history on screen is never just remembered, it is reinvented. Battle of the Bulge may have stumbled through smoke and confusion, but its echoes still thunder across cinema. Like and subscribe for more untold stories from the front lines of filmmaking. And remember, the real battle is always behind the camera.